Welcome now to Jeff Petty. Jeff is the author of the best-selling Teaching Today and How to Be Better at Creativity, and his most recent book, Evidence-Based Teaching, is now in its second edition. He's worked as a consultant with over 200 colleges, including a few in Wales, and we'll hear later of the experiences of colleague Gwent just before lunch. I should say that his first session will focus on formative assessment. So, Jeff, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much indeed. And it's wonderful to have such a large turnout here to look at the most important thing that we do in our colleges, and that's how we teach. That has more impact on student achievement than any other factor, by a factor of about 4, according to all the research on this. And I taught for 20-odd years, mainly A-level physics, actually, and GCSE physics and sciences and so on. Also teacher training. And then I wrote a book called Teaching Today, and then Evidence-Based Teaching after that. Got more and more interested in the teaching and learning aspects of things. But one of the things I do is read through very, very boring reports on research on education. Sometimes exciting, I have to say, which is pleasing. And there's an absolute agreement amongst all researchers in education, and this is a global, body of researchers, an absolute agreement that the most important factor is exactly how the teacher teaches. It's not you as a person, actually. It's not to do so much with you as a personality and so on. Introvert people can become excellent teachers, as can extroverts. It's not a personality thing. It's about the precise methodology you use in the classroom. That has a bigger impact. They say a factor of 3 or 4 times bigger than any other factor. Finance, class size, management style, quality system, you name it. You're 3 to 4 times as effective as any of those things. You have the biggest influence on whether a student learns or not. Not really a big surprise when you think about it, because the learner experience is about what you do in your classroom, tutorial, workshop, place of work, wherever it is that the learning's taking place. And out of all the aspects of teaching and learning, they've done very careful research, that have been summarized by people like Professor John Hattie, he was New Zealand, he's now in Australia, and Professor Robert Marzano. They've summarized research. Research by itself isn't terribly helpful, because there's very often, for every piece of research that says one thing, there's another piece that says the opposite. So what we need is research reviews, and those are the most authoritative source of information. And they find that the most important thing a teacher does, and remember, a teacher is the most important person in terms of achievement, the most important thing that a teacher does is precisely how they use formative assessment, or if you like, assessment for learning. That has more impact on student achievement than most of the other factors that you're in control of. So let's have a look at it. As ever, I'm going to base everything I say not on my personal opinion, but on research reviews. And there was a brilliant research review by Professors Black and William, London professors. Dylan William is probably the foremost educationalist in the UK, and one of the most foremost in the world as well. And they trawled all research in this area to discover what was the best way of giving formative assessment. And they came across some surprises. A lot of the way we do things isn't the best way. I'd like to share with you the findings of this research today. But I reckon if it takes a couple of professors 2-3 years to trawl through all the research and come to a summary, I reckon it should take Wales about 20 minutes. I'm going to, so formative, just one other thing before we actually, I'm going to ask you to guess what Black and William came out with, you see. This diagram, which you've got on page 1 in your pack, with a bit more detail on yours, summarizes the findings of, there are about 500,000 experiments. It seems incredible, but there are 500,000 experiments that have been done with real teachers and real students to discover which teaching methods have the biggest impact on students' achievement. And these have been summarized by people like Hattie and Marzano, and I've tried to sort of summarize it as well in my book, Evidence-Based Teaching. But there's one little thing that an awful lot of teaching methods do which makes them work exceptionally well. And they embed formative assessment What they do is they set a challenging task for the student. Interestingly, the research discovers that if you keep setting achievable tasks, which are just asking students to repeat back stuff, it doesn't work very well. Students don't learn that well that way. And everything I'm saying here is very generalized, I know, but it is true of students with learning difficulties, and it is true of people doing PhDs. And interestingly, the research finds that there are certain ways of teaching that work no matter what your context. Academic level, subject area, age, these factors hardly have a difference when it comes to the big story about which teaching methods have the biggest impact. And it is teaching methods that has the biggest impact. So let's have a look. The thing that makes teaching methods work really well is if you set students, perhaps not first, when you're teaching a topic, at the end of that topic, you set them a challenging task, ideally an open, challenging task. So let's say you're a business studies teacher, and you're teaching marketing, and you say to students, okay, we've studied marketing now for the last, for the first part of this lesson. Here's a scenario for a small hotel. I want you to devise a marketing policy for that small hotel. Yeah? Now, they're using now the information you've given them about marketing to actually problem solve or be creative. So it's a challenging task. They try to link in their idea of marketing with what their prior learning and prior experience. That's what that tries to show. Because when learners learn, they actually make links between brain cells in their brain. And that's how they encode the meaning of what they've learned. Yeah? So there's no pen and paper in there, honest. They actually do it by interlinking neurons and so on. And so they have to do, the new learning has to be linked into the old, and they have to create this new learning themselves. Thereby hangs the problem. It's the students that do the learning, and therefore they get it wrong. And so we get them to express their understanding by their work. Here's my marketing plan. I've just been working on this for 10 minutes. That's what I think this small hotel should do. And then you use that work as feedback to the learner and to you to improve that understanding. So the teacher might recognize, as they look at all the marketing plans that have been devised, that students haven't paid enough attention to the cost, say, of that market. So the teacher stands up and says, hang on, let's just say a little bit more about cost, shall we? Yeah? So that's feedback. The teacher has picked up that something's not quite right and they put it right. Or a student gets feedback as well. That feedback can come from the student too. So a student might think, oh, I think we should do so-and-so, turn to their team member, that's their group that they're working with, and say, I think the hotel should do so-and-so. And the other student might say, no, you Wally, that's a bloody stupid idea because of such and such. And that sort of peer interaction is a very important part of feedback too. So the individual, that's what works best. Nearly all of the really high-performance teaching methods do that in some formal way or other, and we'll see some during the course of today. Okay. But let me just start off by go back to what Black and William found when they did their research review. Remember, a research review is the highest authority in terms of what we know about these things. And as I say, if it takes two professors 4 years, I reckon it takes Wales 20 minutes. So here we go. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you two thought experiments, if I might. The first thought experiment is, imagine that your principal has given you a bonus. So pleased are they with your fantastic success rates and so on, that they've given you a bonus of £100,000. You know, the way they do. And as a consequence, you've decided to have an extension built on your house. You've asked two building firms to build this extension, and they've come back with pretty much the same quote, the same amount of money to build this extension that you want. And your partner said, oh, well, let's just toss a coin. But you said, no, let's look at their quality system. And this is what's come back. You've got some ticks there and some little crosses, I think, or no, underneath the ticks. I've only put the bullets. You've also got things underneath the bullets, and they're identical for both Bill and Sid. Now, Bill's firm and Sid's firm are both quoted the same amount, and you're to choose which building firm you would choose to build your extension. Okay? Off you go. I want to know who you've chosen, and I'd also like to know why. So who would like to give me, well, first of all, let's just vote, shall we? You can choose either Bill or Sid, obviously. Could you put your hand up if you vote for Bill, or rather than Sid? Oh, gosh, that's pretty overwhelming. Put your hands up if you prefer Sid. There are... Well, poor old Sid's out of business there, isn't he? There we are. Okay. Well, who'd like to give us one reason why we choose Bill? So who'd like to give us one reason? There's lots, but one reason why we go for Bill. Why do you like self-assessment?
Obviously, it's important to self-assess your own work because you learn from your own mistakes rather than somebody else telling you what they are.
Right, yeah. It's great, isn't it, to be able to fix your own problems rather than Bill come along and say, you did this wrong. Yeah, much better to sort it out for yourself. Another reason why it works, Bill, why we go for Bill. Yeah, thank you. Right, so he uses a sort of formative approach. There's an expectation that the person puts right any errors. So that if the door doesn't close, Bill will say, you need to sort that out, show it me when it's finished, and I'll just check it again. Yeah, so there's a let's call it, it's a sort of a find faults, but don't just stop there. It's find faults and fix sort of attitude. If there's something wrong, put it right. Sid, you notice, points out the errors and omissions, but doesn't require them to be fixed. And so he might say, hey, the door doesn't fit, and the worker might say, oh, no, that's right. Well, and then Sid walks away. And the worker thinks, oh, well, maybe next door I'll try a better job, but maybe I won't bother because, you know, it doesn't seem to be too problematical. Anyway, another reason why we'll go for Bill rather than Sid. Thank you, back there.
He's encouraging workers to take ownership.
Right, could you say a bit more about ownership? What do you mean by the ownership thing?
Taking the responsibility for their work.
Right.
The standards of their work.
Yeah, they are taking responsibility. And that's actually quite tough, really. I mean, there's an expectation. If it's not good enough, you'll damn well put it right, actually. So it's quite a high expectation here that there's going to be sort of an improvement. One other reason, if there is another one, for Bill, thank you. Right, so it's going to increase their confidence because he's praising them, right? So everyone, I'll put here, everyone gets praise, yeah? Because the trouble with Sid's version is that only perhaps the top quarter or the top half are going to get encouragement and praise because he's reserving it for the most able performers. So if you started as a worker with Sid's firm and you weren't skilled and you were learning, you might never get any praise or encouragement. Whereas if you were an experienced worker, you would get it quite a lot. So everyone gets praise. Let's put there. Okay, jolly good.